Hi, I hope you're having a really nice day. Welcome. Today, we present you a podcast that focuses on one central topic inclusion. It is usually believed that sports don't belong in an inclusive environment or that they are too competitive to teach safe values. However, sports are more like a bridge to inclusion, to friendship, to dignity, and to the idea that everyone deserves a chance. As Dominguez Sarmientos in 2018 said, social inclusion can take place in different educational settings. Sports and physical activity, due to their great popularity among children and young people, usually have a very positive effect on people. What comes from the human relationships that are created through them. To prove this, we had the opportunity to work through this theme during our jornadas, using sports as a resource to raise awareness, promote empathy, and encourage kids to be more kind and respectful towards each other. So we are going to show the previous aspects by talking about our outcomes with the dynamics made for this occasion. And we are going to show you right away and the participant responsible for this production.
Picture this. We sat down, coffee in hand, and started thinking about those everyday moments at school where things don't always feel fair. For example, when someone gets left out of a game, or when certain roles are always given to the same kids. We wanted it to change that. We wanted students to notice these moments and learn how to make better and kinder choices.
To do that, we created in our planning a series of activities that will raise awareness about the importance of how people that compete in sports should do so without facing discrimination and receiving an equal treatment while respecting their human rights, giving the spotlight to women, a social group that has been treated as less throughout the history, not valuing them as equally worthy of the right to receive the same opportunities as men. In a patriarchal society, this has been the norm, and even if the society is slowly making more laws and normatives to protect women and their rights, this comes to a slow pace because, as Gargallo 2012 says, we are equal only since the mid 20th century, a century and a half later than men. However, we fight from the beginning to be recognized as citizens. These activities consist in a diversity of dynamics, from watching stories that teaches us about inclusion, redacting biographies from motivating examples of different sports, to doing exercises as a way to regulate the class and include all the students.
Talk about dynamics. In my case, we carried out a sequence of yoga positions with the aim of calming down after recess. In this activity, 6 yoga positions were practiced, and the students classified them from the most difficult to the simplest. It is important to mention that I also did the positions with them to motivate their participation, and this helped them feel more confident to join the group. This way, every student, regardless of their skill level, could participate at their own pace and feel equally valued within the activity. Creating this kind of supportive atmosphere is essential, don't you think?
My teammate Dan is completely right. We wanted students to experience inclusion directly while participating in activities. In my case, I worked with a very large quantity of students, in this case, 40. And it was common to see that only a few children would take the lead while others step back or were not given as many chances to participate. That's something we were trying and we hope to avoid. So to achieve this and give the opportunity to everyone to be equally involved, we decided to organize activities in smaller groups, like from 7 or 8 people, and assign rotating roles. And it was honestly one of the best decisions taken. This helped students to understand that sports aren't only about being the fastest or the strongest, but they also are about helping each other, recognizing everyone's strengths, and making sure no one stays out.
Our results all were favorable, but they came in diverse manners. For example, what was the highlight in your outcome with the yoga dynamic, Dan?
A very important aspect that I saw was the interaction of students with autism spectrum disorder (ASD). They received spontaneous support from their classmates to copy the positions. Their peers explained step by step how to do each movement without the need for me as the teacher to give the order to help them. The students with ASD accept this support with trust, which show the importance of collaborative work in a heterogeneous class. This experience allowed me to see that diversity in the classroom is essential for the development of social interaction skills in students who have more difficulties to socialize. As MESA 2022 states, inclusion is a right that all humans begin have. Educational inclusion for children with ASD is basic to generate positive changes in their lives because it helps to develop capacities, skills, aptitudes, and attitudes.
It's really interesting. This activity makes us promote inclusion in a way that respects the differences from all individuals, having them interact with each other, doing the same thing but with different adaptations if necessary, not excluding anyone. And how did your students react to the story, Jos? How this promoted the inclusion of everyone in the sports?
We hit play on La Copa de la Selva, a very interesting video tale, and wow, the kids were so captivated by it. The moment the video showed cheating or someone being left out, especially the part where the female founder wasn't allowed to play, the kids were already pointing at the screen saying, Eso no se hace.
Las trampas que pondrían para sus oponentes, acompañado de su capitán griego. Robaremos los plátanos de los monos. Pero, capitán. Los días pasaron y finalmente chacales y bandas llegaron a la final.
Their reactions were priceless. You could see their little justice radars turn on instantly. They started calling out the unfair moments, sharing what they thought should have happened instead, and explaining why treating others unequally is something bad. It was one of those moments where you realize kids get fairness way more than we think. Their reflections of the video naturally connected with the idea that all people deserve equal opportunities, a principle aligned with what is stated in the second article of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This article reminds us that every person is entitled to the same rights and freedoms without distinction of race, sex, religion, or origin. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Hearing the children relate these values to the story show how deeply they understand fairness and respect concepts that go far beyond the video and into real life. Building on this discussion, the children also thought about how unfair treatment can make someone feel less valued. This connects with what Peces Barba in the 2005 points out. Inequality goes against a person's dignity because everyone deserves to be treated with respect. The students recognize that exclusion or cheating is not just bad behavior, but that it can hurt a person's sense of worth. The reflections show a growing understanding that fairness is important not only in games but in everyday life.
Very well. Talking about all deserving to be treated equally, we can highlight the participation of women in sports being important as the men's participation. How did it go?
Well, to do that, we registered basic information about a certain athlete of their choice as biographies. In this part, we prepare a presentation that gathered that information in a simple format. After explaining that to the students, we show them a video of each female athlete to give them a better idea about how they practice their sport and to catch their attention watching the great abilities of these deportists. Meanwhile, they realize the impact women also have in different sports. After reviewing and grading the deportees' lives, to complement and reinforce the impact these examples have in society and in the sports, we had the students turn the actions they saw and read from the athletes into instructions, as if the achievements from these athletes were saved from a manual to become like them, motivating the students to follow into their steps and to be sure they could also achieve great things if they proposed to that. To end the session and continue with this focus, we did an active pause where we tried different movements based on the different sports we saw the athletes do in the videos, doing them in different levels to have all the students participate regardless of their physical abilities. With this, we work an inclusive approach not only with having women be recognized as people that should receive respect and that are equally worthy as men, but also with the students regardless of their individual differences in physical activity, since according to Dominguez 2018, The purpose of inclusion is to adapt individual and team sports and physical activities so that all types of students, regardless of their physical, economic, and/or social characteristics, can perform them included in the group.
And what about you, Ross? What did you observe in your class?
What I noticed was that at first the students weren't very enthusiastic about working with the biographies, but as they learned more about each athlete, they began to show real interest. Some comment things like, she tries again even when she makes mistakes, or even if she loses, she keeps going. And this connects with Lee's idea in 2011 that inclusion grows when learners find meaning and see themselves reflected in the learning process. The only concern I personally had was that, since it's more common that the media focuses on men and their achievements when talking about sports, the kids would belittle the female athletes that we would show them since we observed they were also not familiar with them. Thankfully, but unsurprisingly, they didn't react that way, and they even showed to be curious about them, having no stereotypes about them. With this, I could reflect that society is the one that transforms our mindset in a negative way when perceiving both genders, and we don't come with those ideas when we are young.
Wow, I found your experience very interesting, especially because in my case it was a tiny bit opposite. Like in the moment I mentioned the subject of women in sports, I had several of my students raise their hand and tell me about feminine teams and how their dads told them about them. Although I must admit none of them knew their names, only that they also play and have their own teams in sports like football, and one kid even mentioned boxing. I actually found their faces really funny after I asked them for the names of any of the women they mentioned. Kinda sad but funny at the same time how they turn and look at me like deers at headlights. I just think of it as a nice teaching moment by asking them right after about male sports players, and once I received several names, I asked them, how did you guys learn the male names but not any of the females? Is it because male teams and their players are more important? Why do you guys think you couldn't name any of the women's names? I wasn't trying to make them feel bad, but rather to make the mouse in their head spit, for them to question themselves. Once we got to the biography part, they were actually kind of more invested than I thought they would be. We watched and talked about the presentation I projected, and they asked me about the sports they saw and how some of them, like gymnastics, were known to them. I was happily surprised when they actually took their time writing their biographies and representing what they saw on tiny drawings. Although there were one or two boys who chose to write about Cristiano Ronaldo instead of any of the presented women, I talked to them about it.
What we take as learn from this experience is that inclusion isn't something that just happens. It requires intentionally designing activities that allow students to recognize unfair situations and rethink them. When we provide the right scenarios, they make the connections on their own. Working with female athletes made me reflect on the responsibility we have as future teachers to question the stereotypes that still shape many spaces, including sports. Equality is not just a concept, it's a practice that must be intentionally built by offering the same opportunities to everyone. When I heard the students talk about effort, trying again, and being fair, I understood inclusion in a new way. I saw that real learning happens when students relate these ideas to their daily lives. This experience showed me that inclusion begins with small actions and with giving every student a chance to participate and, of course, to feel support. In general, as a team, we realize that inclusion in sports and education becomes real when students are allowed to question, to reflect, and participate without barriers. The activities show us that concepts like equality, dignity, and human rights are not abstract. They take shape in the way children treat one another, the opportunities we offer, and the examples we choose to present. This project reminds us that as future teachers, fostering an inclusive environment starts with creating learning experiences that make sense to students and encourage them to act with fairness inside and outside the classroom.
To end this podcast, we would like to thank you who are listening to us for caring about this topic. We appreciate that because when someone takes the time to reflect on the importance of an environment that promotes a fair and equal society for all people, one that treats them according to their necessities and individual characteristics, that is when we can start making a difference. When there is an interest, we can start raising awareness and acting to solve a problem, little by little, but the important thing is that we start with something.